Welcome to the Library of Humanity. Today we're talking about how society and the economy don't let you be your true self. So it's very, very important to be your true self because your true self is, by being that, you are always happy. So it's eternal happiness. Whereas society and the economy, the essence of that is that you become a consumer. Now, the nature of being a consumer is you're always searching for pleasures out there, and there's always a new pleasure. So there's always that next shirt that you want. There's always that next car that you want. There's always that next meal that you want. And this idea of consuming is in every aspect of our life, even and that's how we interact with others. So like our relationships become like quantifiable. So like it's all about the numbers. It's all about itemizing. It's making things making everything into a thing that you consume. Okay, and this is extremely unhealthy because it goes into our self-esteem. It goes into our subconsciousness, which has no like monetary value, has no money value, right? You can't put a price on everything. So you can't put a price on how you interact with your parents. You can't put a price on how you interact with your dog. You can't put a price on you meditating for the first time or you meditating for a year. There's no price on that. And what I'm saying is that is like the most important part of life is being your true self. There is absolutely nothing more important than finding out your true self and being that. Because once you are that, then you can serve the community that's around you. You can serve humanity even. And I think it's actually both how you are able to serve the community as best you can is by being your true self. So you have to serve and find out who you are at the same time. And the economy and society do not allow you any time at all to become your true self. There is because you're viewed as a consumer and a worker first and foremost. So you're seen as an aspect of the economy. You're seen as a member of this society, and society has a lot of messiness to it. Because society has it's unhealthy because a lot of it is unhealthy because it's imbalanced in a lot of its aspects. It's like in America we overvalue individualism and we undervalue community service, and cohesiveness, solidarity, togetherness. And that would be a perfect example of how society can't teach you how to be your true self. Society can't teach you how to be happy. Society can't teach you how to be self-actualized. In the future, that's what our society will be about because we realize that self-actualization it equals true happiness. And everybody is searching true happiness. But the thing is, we are taught this myth in our society that happiness is found in things and consuming. So how can we be a part of this society to serve it, yet be our true self? And that is going to be a huge lesson that we need to think about in this episode is how do we find time for ourselves to dive into our imbalances? Because we have learned from society that like individualism is good and we don't have enough time for service and togetherness and solidarity or value things like harmony, beauty, relaxation, contemplation, especially contemplation. That's probably number one, is our society does not give us enough time to contemplate, to sit in a room or sit in the woods by yourself and contemplate your life to figure out where am I healthy and where am I unhealthy? Where is there work that needs to be done in order to improve myself? Because when you have time to contemplate, then you're able to know where you can use your energy to best serve society. You realize like, oh, I'm skilled at this, so I want to use this skill to improve society. Or I'm not skilled at this, so I know I don't want to do that. Or this makes me happy, so I want to do more of that. For example, I love teaching, so I want to do more of that, and I want to do it not for money, but for service, for serving the betterment of humanity, but that equals God. So like whenever you're serving the community, serving humanity, serving the environment, that is God. So in this episode, what I'm talking about is a lot of people in our society and our economy pushes us to always be thinking about money, always be thinking about how can I survive in this, how can I survive in this economy? How can I consume or have more? So it's all about it's really about having in our society rather than being. So we need more time for being and less time for having and doing. But our society again doesn't give us that time. So in this particular society, Western society, in like Europe and America, you're seen as a consumer and a worker, like I mentioned, and you're seen as something that can be used by the system. So the system is so everyone's a puppet of the system. Absolutely everybody. Donald Trump is a puppet of the system. Janitors are puppets of the system. But if you imagine someone like Jesus, now Jesus was in society, yet he was not of society, meaning that he was his true self, yet in this society. So how can we be a part of society and serve it, yet be our true self, right? Like I mentioned, that's contemplation, meditation, and happiness. So videos like this, for example, where I am just talking from my heart and I'm not doing it, I'm trying not to do it for money or for power. So whenever you're doing something for more having, because what we want is power and money. In our deep animal type behavior, in our ego is always worried about money and power. How can I get more power? How can I get more money? How can I be safer? How can I be more free? These are always questions that our ego is trying to tell us that we need more and more and more. But what I've noticed is my ego is a complete distraction from me being my true self. So when I am my true self, like now, where I'm trying not to worry about how maybe the listeners to this video, how they might judge me or think about me. So it's actually caring less about what other people think about you and worry more about how can I help you? How can I serve you? Right? And I know that the way I can serve people is by being my true self, which is my passion and my talent, my natural skills. I can improve my skills, yet I still have this natural ability. And for me, my natural ability is just trying to explain where I'm coming from. And also a natural ability is to think about life and contemplate life, where I can see how life does not equal what society tells me that it is. So I've always questioned society's assumptions of what life is. So for example, when I was in high school and junior high, I was really into sports. I was decent at sports, so I assumed that sports were super important to life, okay? And that to be a successful person means you follow that path of athletics. So that path leads to, if you're into that, if you were meant to be an athlete, that's fine. But I was not meant to be an athlete. I was meant to do things like this, just sitting in like a library and talking about life and contemplating wisdom. That's what I was born to do. Yet, what's interesting is there is not much money involved in that. So why is there not much money in just contemplating and doing philosophy and meditating and self-actualizing? Okay, so why is there not money in that? It's because of the unconsciousness of our society at this point. Okay, like people in our society, we assume that we overcame the Dark Ages. Okay, if you imagine like the Dark Ages of Europe, um, people think that we went way beyond that. Like the Dark Ages, we were at 10% of development, and now our society is at like 90% development. Okay, that's not the case. What I'm saying today is that our society is we went in the Dark Ages like 5% development, and then we went to 6% development here in America or current modern day Europe. Okay, and places like Sweden or Norway went up to 7%. Okay, so America is somewhere in between like Sweden and the Dark Ages because it's a whole nother step. Okay, because especially if you look at spiral dynamics, so America is at the modern age. The Dark Ages were in the classical age, and now places like Sweden and Norway are at the postmodern age. So it's a full step. So like I said, 5%, 6%, 7%. And we need to keep going. So we need more people in our society to contemplate, work on themselves, improve themselves, serve more, think about their egos less, do their natural talents more. Because we're so focused on surviving, we're so focused on more money and more power, we're so focused on tribalism, we're so focused on overthinking, we're so focused on consuming. And this is keeping us from being happy. So it's really confusing for me because I know that by doing less it makes me happier, and by being more it makes me happier. So I'm very confused when people just want to like do, have, because I know that it doesn't make them that happy, right? What America has done is it's brought us out of poverty. That's so key because poverty is so distracting. Okay, so first, poverty is the most distracting aspect of life from self-actualization or self-realization or being your true self. Okay, so we need to get out of poverty. So if you look at across the world, like there's what's called the bottom billion. So the poorest billion people are at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and they're worried about like the quality of water. Like the water that they're drinking is contaminated by the river that they're by. Like I watched a video yesterday about how in India, in New Delhi, the river is very clear coming from the Himalayas, but when the river goes through New Delhi, there's people at the end of the river from New Delhi down the river, 20 miles, who are having to drink the water that people are defecating in and washing their clothes in and sacrificing animals, and even people who die, they're placed in the river because it's seen as a holy river. So people are after they die, they're placed in the river, their entire body, or their ashes. And people down the river 20 miles have to drink that crap of water. It's just crap. And these people, it hurts their joints. I don't know the science behind it, but when you're drinking this water, because these people don't have enough money to drink bottled water. So the only safe water in places like India and Bangladesh and sub-Saharan Africa is bottled water. Yet people don't have enough money to drink bottled water. Can you imagine like not having enough money to have clean water? Like that just blew my mind yesterday when I was thinking about that. Can you imagine not having enough money to not fill your stomach? Like you have to only have a meal and a half a day instead of your 3 meals a day, right? You know that your 3 meals a day make you happy. That's like this threshold that's above the like merely surviving, the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. So that's extremely distracting because we're not healthy physically, but that's the first step. So we are physically healthy by getting out of poverty. And it's actually not the bottom billion. There's actually a lot of people who are in poverty because I believe that the threshold is actually more at about like $70,000 a year. Okay, so people who don't have that are not meeting the essentials. Okay, so there's like very basic essentials in life, which would be clean water, shelter, um, clothes, and just enough food. But now here in America, there's another type of poverty where people are maybe making 30 or 40 grand a year, but they can't afford healthy food. They can't afford time. They can't afford like a book about self-actualization. They can't afford to educate themselves. They can't afford to go to 4 years of college. They can't afford that master's degree. They can't afford that doctor that'll give them the right procedure for so that they can live another 10 years, or they don't have the money to be a member at a fitness club where they can stay in shape. Okay, so in places like Sweden and Norway, why they are a whole nother step above us is they realize that that's actually the minimum. The minimum is physical health. That's the minimum. That's the start. Whereas here in America, we're like just focused on physical attractiveness. We're focused on more power. So like 5% of people have a lot of power, and then the 50% of people, the bottom 50%, have like no power, and they're not even in the middle class where they can afford to be a healthy person or an intellectual, or have the ability to serve the community as best they can, because they have not realized who they are yet, because they haven't had the ability, because they're not making about 70,000 a year. Okay, and this is like that would be for like a family, or if you're an individual, probably 60,000. So we need everyone to reach the middle class first. Okay, because now we have the ability to reach across the aisle to help, and helping people is reaching across. It's not reaching down. So there's more dignity when you're reaching across to your neighbor rather than reaching down to help the homeless, because there's like this mentality where I help you because I'm better. No, the reason why you help is because everything is God. Like everything is God, so you just serve God. You see, and you don't even see problems. All you see is like, it's all God, it's all beautiful. I'm just going to be myself. And then you naturally help everybody. And you naturally get out of this system that we call capitalism. You get out of this system even of socialism. Like, just don't label it. Because as soon as you label something as capitalism or socialism, you're giving power to the system. But the power needs to be in God and your true self. And everyone as a result, or a conglomeration of everybody's true self together. And so this is like the grand utopia, right? But this is what we're working towards. So I'm just giving you a picture of what real eternal happiness for humans would look like theoretically, is that everyone would have the ability to be their true self. Everyone would see that the purpose is to realize your true self and serve God in that way. And you can change the word from God to like oneness if you want, or just the universe. But it's actually, the universe is not the same as God, right? Because God is greater than the universe. But that's another topic, because this topic is more about practicality of like in your day-to-day. Ignore the little thought bubble in your mind about like, I need more power and I need more money. Okay, what I'm saying is, you don't need more than that 70,000, like I mentioned. Maybe that's fine. Maybe making 200,000 is fine, but it can't be at the expense of others not having 70,000. Okay, so here in America, like a lot of people aren't at that $70,000 a year mark. Now, I think in Europe they talk about euros per month, so I don't really know how to do the math, so I can't tell you what that is. But it's basically like the ability to live in the middle class. So pushing everyone towards that. So that's why we can't even focus on becoming rich yet. Like we're focusing because there's so many people who are poor and doing the work for the rich people. The system is set up for inequality. Like that's the purpose of it, is inequality. Like if you look at the laws of capitalism, the rules of capitalism, capitalism is based on inequality. It's based on giving favoritism to those who already have. And it's based on making life hard for people who don't have. They were born not having. And it's not even just materials, but it's also like natural abilities that randomly align with society. So a natural ability would be like athleticism. So in our society in America, we favor people who are very physically athletic, but that's like a very random characteristic that we enjoy or value that we have. We also value people who can speak really well and they become very powerful, even though they're talking nonsense. They're just manipulating the English language in a way that sounds nice. And they give you a lot of hope. So like by listening to people like Trump or Obama, they give you a lot of hope, right? For me, I don't like Trump at all because he's so low on all types of lines of development. And he's 100% in his ego, like 100%. Whereas Obama, he was a lot in his ego, but he was a systems thinker and he knew where the problems lay, where the problems lied, where the problems were, where the problems were in society and how to improve the system as a whole from the root, which of course is inequality. That's the issue, is inequality, because inequality makes it creates natural tribalism where you have the have and the have-nots, and that's tribalism. Okay, so the idea is we don't want tribalism anymore. Tribalism keeps us from being we. It keeps us in the us versus them, but we need to come in the cohesive we, like all of humanity, right? But when you're listening to the rhetoric of Republicans and Democrats, it's a lot about us versus them, and it's just a different view of it, right? Because Democrats see that like immigrants are us, but Republicans are them, and then Republicans are like immigrants are them, and Americans who are conservative are us. So it's just a different perspective on tribalism, but it's equally tribalism. However, I would argue it's a false equivalency overall because Democrats in general are a little bit more enlightened than Republicans. But again, it's like 5% to 6% or 5% to 7%. Because there's this unlimited amount of development that needs to occur. And it's unlimited, it doesn't stop. So like once you hit 100%, there's a whole new ball game. And I don't even know what that is. That's once you become the universe itself, I have no idea what comes next. Once you have God realization, you realize that everything is God, and then I have no idea what comes after that. But there's some sort of development, but I have no idea what that is. But for now, seeing that everything is God, and that all humans are God, and that all animals and plants and the earth itself is God, that's where we need to go from here. So that's the pragmatic step. And it's very, very pragmatic, actually, very practical, because it decreases tribalism, it decreases ego, it decreases suffering. So when you see everything as God, you naturally become happier. And you're ignoring all of this attachment to power and money, and having and doing. So having and doing become like your addictions. So like most people in America are addicted to having and doing. And that's what I'm saying, is you, all of us, we're addicted to the internet, we're addicted to social media, we're addicted to manipulating and using our family to our own benefit. We're addicted to making more money, we're addicted to having more power and prestige in our society. We're addicted to trying to have a good persona out there in your community. Yes, you want to serve the community, but you do it for selfish reasons to have more accolades and respect. Like, I'm saying, like, even the desire for others to respect you, that's egoic. That's your ego wanting respect and to be liked by others. What I'm saying is, what's more important is the truth. What's more important is reality. What's more important is God. So when there's like a conversation around the table and there's people who are just expressing their points of view, oftentimes they're expressing their point of view from an egoic perspective, no matter their political party. They have an agenda. So most people have an agenda in life, and their agenda is tied to more power, convincing others to think like them, convincing others to join their tribe, convincing others to, I guess, go away from their values and entering into my values. So everyone should think the way that I think. That's a big part of ego. And that type of ego is not just in yourself, but it's in the group. So like, what kind of groups are you a part of? Let's say you're a part of like a college. Now the ego structure is both in you, but the group ego is using you. So it's like a cult where you have the power at the top of the group. But even if it's a democratic or like a lateral, I guess, structure, hierarchical structure where it's democratic, it's still a group dynamic where you're being manipulated by the group. But no one's doing it consciously. It's all subconscious. And that's how cults work too, is you don't know you're in a cult. Like, if people knew they were in a cult, they would just leave it, right? But when you talk to someone who is in a cult, what do they try to do? They say, no, I'm not in a cult. I'm doing the objective truth. I'm trying to improve the world. This person that I respect is a perfect person or an amazing person. So that's why I devote my time and money to this person. And that's how cults work. And now if you look at our society and our economy, it's like you're devoting all of your time to the values and the structural system of the economy. If you watch yourself when you go to work, like you behave to your boss much differently than you behave with your coworkers or the people that are sitting near you. And you behave way differently with like a teenager. So think about the difference between you interacting with a teenager, your coworker, and then your boss, and then the boss of that boss, right? It's always different. And you do it naturally because society has taught you the value of hierarchy. Okay. What I'm saying is hierarchy does not matter. It's BS. It's belief systems. David Thomas, if you've ever heard of David Thomas, he talks about BS is belief systems. So belief systems are taught to you. You're not like born into this truth of beliefs. Okay, beliefs are a part of the structure that tries to teach you the group dynamic, the group ego. So what I'm saying is truth above group ego. And how our group ego works is capitalism. How our group ego works is consumerism. How our group ego works is striving for money and power. And this goes into your very thoughts in your mind. Okay, notice right now, the thoughts in your mind are about money. The thoughts in your mind are about having. The thoughts in your mind are about that next pleasure. The thoughts in your mind are about, I need to do this, I need to do that. It's about doing. It's not about just being yourself. Like, when was the last time you had a thought that was, be your true self? Don't worry about what anybody thinks about you. Serve God. Allow time to contemplate. When was the last time that you thought about this kind of stuff? Because the thoughts are naturally egoic. The purpose of overthinking is ego. So that's why you are never going to overthink contemplation. You're never going to overthink meditating. You're going to, the overthinking when you're meditating, the overthinking is your ego judging yourself. Also, the group judging yourself, or the perception that the group is going to judge you for not being spiritual enough. That's a big one, is you're like, I'm not spiritual enough. I'm not spiritual enough. But everything is spiritual. These books behind me are spiritual. This shirt is spiritual. Me getting angry sometimes, if I'm not being egoic, is spiritual, because it's like this natural feeling like, no, that's unjust. So it's like you get angry because you see that it's not serving God, or you get angry because there's an increase in ego in the group. You get angry because people aren't listening to your truth. But you can't do it for selfish reasons. Like, if it is the truth, and you know it is the truth in your heart. So how do you know something is true? Is you got to listen to your heart. You got to listen to being and existence and truth. And it is in your intuition, your heart. So what I'm doing right now is I'm trying to convince myself as well. I do these videos mostly for my own development. But if people are listening, then that's great. I hope that I'm being of service to you. If you want more on this topic, I thought about this when I was listening to Russell Brand. So if you want to know more about not trusting the system and trusting yourself instead, I would listen to more Russell Brand. If you have any more questions or argumentations, you can comment below. If you like this video, you can go ahead and like. But I don't really care to spread my message too much. I don't want to be like a huge, have a lot of like power and get. I don't even want to make money from YouTube. Originally, I wanted to make money doing this, but now I realize that like I want to be myself. I don't want to do it for money and power. So, because that's way too cult-like. I don't want to start anything in that fashion. I just want to be myself, speak my truth, and hopefully I connect with 1, 2, 3, maybe 10 people out there. So I hope you have a good weekend. Peace.